communications and marketing, and this is again one of those where there was really strong synergy across all of the committees throughout the discussions that they had, what we heard at the Big Ideas workshops, and we've already been talking about some of these as obviously as we've gone on so far. But the points here, the target is that we need to have consistent communication and marketing plans so that we've got that clear, consistent message, and that we're taking, we're using our resources to best advantage and not conflicting one thing with another or confusing people. And then secondly, that we want to communicate Lewisville's values and offerings, because part of what we're talking about is probably stuff people don't know about Lewisville, or it hasn't been so much the case in the past, and so it's something that's new. So it does take that communication and the marketing to get the word out to people about that. We think this is important, as I say. Better communication and marketing was something that we've heard throughout this entire process. People desire to have more of that connection. Lots of people don't know about the programs that you already have, let alone some of these new things that we're talking about. We have the discussion here, the point of several logos exist, both old and new ones, and so there isn't a clear overall brand. And that's all of that together is part of what, Neil, you've been telling us and reminding us since yesterday about the need to communicate what we have and what we're trying to do. So this big move has 5 key action priorities. Number 1 is adopt and implement a 3-year communication plan. This is currently being drafted. Once I give you these highlights, James will be able to get into the details of things with you. But basically, the city staff had been working on that. The committee had a lot of different ideas about communications, and many of those were already part of that plan. So getting that together, bringing it forward for your consideration is one of the top priorities that we think needs to happen. Along with this, conducting a communications audit, and what this is doing is saying, hire somebody from the outside who can come in and look at what's going on now, how effective are the communications, what's coming up, what are the opportunities in the next 3 to 5 years. So how should Lewisville position itself to take advantage of those and be as effective as it possibly can be in terms of communication. Now, before you ask, I want to make it clear that the fact that you might think, well, why do we do the audit second and the plan first? Really, these are intended, they could go side by side or they could go in whichever order, but there's work underway already on the communications plan, and that's why we listed it in this particular order. Number 3, a brand assessment, and this has come up in a couple of these conversations so far about the current branding and whether that is really how effective it is, that marketing potential. So the idea of let's take a look at that, get a branding expert to help us look at that, and either if we're going to keep this one, we need to roll it out and really be consistent about it. If we're going to modify one, let's modify it and then roll it out and be consistent. But in any case, to use a brand more effectively than the way that it's been working so far. 4th, a citywide marketing plan. And so the marketing plan is really trying to persuade people to come here to visit, to come here to live, to come here to locate their businesses and so forth. And so while it's related to communication, it's not just about that. The note here is that there are some existing marketing plans for particular things, but not for a general kind of a marketing about the city of Lewisville and all of the offerings and the identity, the character that we've been talking about in the last few days. The last item here is one that came through the committees and through their ideas, and basically a resident recruitment marketing initiative. And obviously you can see it says consider this. This is one that would really need some investigation to figure out whether or not it's worthwhile or what the results might be. But the basic notion here is that with what you're talking about, with the green centerpiece, with these new neighborhood choices, with the old town, all of these things, you're creating some new choices here that people do not know about, do not associate with Lewisville. And so the idea of this would be an effort that would really be geared to telling folks what's here with a hope then that they would choose to come here as a resident, that they would come to live here. That's obviously a different sort of a plan than trying to get somebody to show up at an event. So, so it's a different item, of course, but it's one that the committees came up with. It's one that we think makes sense to consider in the context of this overall vision, because I think that this overall vision really gives you a different story to tell for people. So with that, James, is there anything? Well, let me open it up for you all first, because James will be able to answer lots of your questions and whatever you want. So let's open it up to you all and see where we go from there.
Okay, back in one slide, please.
This way.
Hire a professional to come in and determine our brand. Did we just do that 5 years ago? Purple Market?
We did that under a tourism umbrella.
We hired a professional to come in and tell us what we did. So I'll stop you there. We did hire someone to come in and do that. I don't know, but I would be willing to bet if we hired another professional, they're going to say, yeah, let me do this work, and I'm going to recommend a change.
Which is why the RFP would specifically state, if your recommendation is to change or replace the brand, your firm will not be eligible to compete for that contract.
But I want to say this too, I was never a big fan of the Purple Market when it came out. It has grown on me, and I will say this, it very carries on conviction, but I will say this, when I go to functions around our area, whether it be mayor's meetings or whether it be whatever function I go to, people know us by that Purple Market brand. And that just shocks them.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, they know us and they commend me all the time. It's pretty good. So I just want to give you that kudos, because I know you were a big supporter of that. You were a big fan of that. I wasn't at the time. I said, Mary Karen, I will tell you this. I have a lot of accolades from people that I don't even know. Just come up and say something about it because they know where. And I'm talking about not in the city, but outside.
Okay. Okay.
So here's the thing, and Donna got an earful of this down at the TML from me and from somebody I dragged her to listen to. A logo is not a brand.
True statement.
A logo is not a brand.
But a brand could be a logo.
If you look at the actual brand standard guide that we have, our brand is not the bird. Our brand is the deep roots, broad wings, bright future. And actually, that's a tagline that reflects the brand. You might recall when this brand was researched about 4.5 years ago, primarily as a tourism brand, we did conduct research in the community. We did some surveying, did some on-the-street interviews, did some stakeholder interviews and groups. About 800 some odd total people got input and came up with a list of 7 characteristics that people said they either identified with Lewisville or wanted to. It's interesting, those are almost the exact same characteristics you're seeing today. If you look at the list of 7 then, they haven't changed in the past 4 years, they're just kind of worded differently. So the brand was built to reflect those characteristics. The bird was chosen partly to show the tide in nature, which as we're seeing from the green space and the green centerpiece and expanding the green, we have a tremendous tie to natural resources in Lewisville that frankly we have not taken advantage of as much as we should for a variety of reasons. So we wanted it to be a nature type of image. And the bird itself was chosen because at that time we had one of the largest purple martin roosts in the southwestern United States. Now what the south states along the Gulf Coast are discovering is that changes in wind patterns over the Gulf have pushed those birds into Mexico. So our 50,000 birds are down to a few thousand birds. They still come, but really the ones that are determined. So the idea of a natural connection is still very vital and valid. A martin itself might not be the best example, but as you said, there's some visibility attached to it now.
But here's the problem I see with that, tagline, is that, and I'll pick Fort Worth as a good example. In a very few words, they have summed up what you can find here. City of cowboys and culture. Okay? I have an image of what I'll find here. I read our tagline, and I don't know that I will find arts, lake, green space, medical district, high-tech med, warehousing, proximity to an airport, the list goes on. our brand doesn't communicate what you find here. What are we?
Well, and you just listed 9 characteristics. I would have to say that you will not find anyone able to take those 9 characteristics and boil them into a single statement, which is the challenge we faced.
Yeah, you can't get it all in one. So you have to decide what is it you're going to try to put out there. But right now, to me, we don't really have a brand.
You give us that green centerpiece, we have an identity and a brand. That's something you can tag to. Right now, the challenge we found in the study is, well, the lake. People know about the lake. When you ask people about the lake, one of the first things they talk about is drownings. You don't want to tie yourself to that. We still have a state senator who insisted ours is the most dangerous lake in the country. Well, he's former state senator now, thank goodness. Yes. And then you talk about Old Town. We have a very nice Old Town district. We're building it up. It's certainly not the biggest, most prominent in the area. We have tremendous retail. It's hard to market just off of retail. So what we found in the study, in the research, there's not a single 1 or 2 characteristics that stood out and people could say, that's Lewisville. With the possible exception of the fighting farmer, but not everybody in Lewisville is a fighting farmer. No offense, but there's some non-farmers in this city.
Who are they?
Russ is hunting them down. Russ and Tim are hunting them down one by one and shipping them out. But there was not a single characteristic or a pair of characteristics that were head and shoulders above all the rest. It was like you listed about 9 items. There was about 7 or 8 different items. So part of what you need to understand with branding is branding conducts an image, but your image only can reflect what you are and what you do. And the study did not show 1 or 2 things that stood out as, this is Lewisville. We're getting there. We've got some opportunities through 2025 to make that happen. Right now, that has not existed previously.
So that kind of goes back to the idea here would be kind of revisit what you've got in place now, and particularly in light of this kind of a vision. How does the brand change? How does it change? Does the logo change? If so, how does it change? Personally, Mayor, I'm with you. I think that Purple Martin is so distinctive because it's so unusual compared to the other cities, and I think it's very memorable because of that. But y'all may want to
It's so new that if I remember correctly, we weren't going to spend money on changing all the logos. Some of our trucks and vehicles still have the old logo,
Right.
but that's okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, every 5 years you can change. I mean, you're going to get a different group. I don't like that. Let's change it. I don't like this. So when you ever end up with one different thing, Fort Worth has, because they were captive for 100 years. They've been captive. So, but I mean, you can't just establish. We're all. I mean, all the cities our size have art in this area, close to the airport, Grapevine, Beulah's, all of them. All we're close to the airport, we're probably those. So I'm like, I don't know how you can do it on your own. I'm not saying you shouldn't incorporate that in there, but I don't know how you can differentiate us from Grapevine.
What was interesting, and it actually surprised me, comments that I saw from 2 of the 4 subcommittees said they wanted to see the brand used more. That they liked it, they wanted to see the chamber use it, they wanted to see the schools use it, they wanted to see it replacing all the old logos. It kind of surprised me a little bit because not everybody buys into it. But what a brand assessment, if done in this way, can do is tell you either, yeah, the brand's got some potential, but you need to do some tweaks, or we think you need to go a different direction, and we want to get some outside assistance on that.
James, talk a little bit about the fact that you don't create the brand should reflect what already exists in your community.
Can I get 2 cents in?
Neil, go ahead.
So I want to make sure everybody understands, I have no problem with the logo. But the logo is not our brand.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, I have no problem with the logo. I like the logo. I think it is distinctive. I think it is something people look at and notice. No problem with the logo, but it's not communicating who we are. If you live in Garland and I ask you, what's your image of Lewisville? Yeah.
What's your image of Garland?
My image,
What's your image of Garland?
they've got, they manufacture hats, there's a lot of older population there, there's some new construction there, they don't have much of an arts
They
community.
don't have a logo that tells you that.
No, because logos don't pay. That's
Or
not-
brand, excuse me, that has a brand study.
No, and
Okay.
the problem with Garland is they don't have much of a brand, nor does Perseus Bedford. These are cities that really haven't branded themselves.
Other than Fort Worth, who's good examples of municipalities, cities that are well branded?
Big Z.
Our size. But our size.
Yeah, it'd have to be our side.
James?
I didn't know if that was a question for me or if it was a general question.
General question.
In our market, Arlington is much larger than us, but Arlington has done an outstanding job of branding itself as an entertainment district, and that led in a way to bringing the Cowboys and keeping the Rangers. They branded themselves as that. Fort Worth obviously is one you talk about. Mansfield is developing a very strong brand right now. They're still in the process of it.
North Richland Hill, it's got a pretty good job.
They have.
We have that bankruptcy?
They have a good package, but it has not really caught on in the region as much as you would like it to, but they have a pretty good internal package. In terms of cities branding successfully, frankly, cities our size struggle with that, because it's hard for a city this size to have one characteristic.
What about Mansfield?
New Braunfels.
Well, New Braunfels isn't in the area, but yeah, New Braunfels, absolutely, San Marcos, to the same extent. Mansfield is working right now on a young family. They've got that new sports complex. They're trying to really push hard on the young families and kids type of brand. And in the southern part of the Metroplex, that's really picking up. It's not up here much because you have to pass so much to get there. And it's still a new effort they put on. For a city our size, especially in a Metroplex where we're one of 50 cities in a 6-county area, branding is incredibly tough because you have to have the one thing that you stand out for, and yet find that nobody else does.
They built a big, huge facility out there on the lake that had hotels and everything else, and shopping, and what, I did
Well, and
You would fit in
It's on the list.
where the Green Center is, would be part of it.
Yeah.
Don and I talked about leveraging the lake, because a lot of people don't know we don't own the lake, but I don't care. It's got a name.
It's got your name on it, so, yeah, and that goes back to the point about the idea of the green centerpiece as being something that could really become something that is part of a brand that's different here than for other cities in this region.
Yeah, so boat shows on ESPN, it's talked about at Lewisville Lake.
So I guess what I'm hearing on the communications, and let's see if we have some more discussion, it sounds like there's a strong interest in the importance of communication and marketing as a big move, that we need to do more, we need to do it better. We haven't really talked so much about these first couple of action priorities. So let me put them back up so you can think about them. Basically, I think that they're directed at kind of what you're after, Neil, of let's figure out what we're doing and what to do better.
How do we sell ourselves?
How do we sell ourselves better? So that's one part. The other part is really that as you put this Vision 2025 in place, and that starts to change what you're about and what kind of places are here, you want to be communicating and marketing that. So it's important, I think, and appropriate to look at this in the context of Vision 2025.
I would say one thing though, that training, I would like for us to go back to our old style business card. And I don't mean the paper.
The card stock itself.
That this stuff we got so thin, and it's almost like a piece of paper.
Put me down for that.
Yeah.
I go to a lot of
When they get the ends, get curled over and rolled over, and give somebody, they're never nice.
They're never
Cards.
sharp looking.
You're not giving
Okay.
away a card that looks nice, giving a crumpled up little kind of piece of paper.
So you're saying basically the better stock in paper.
Yeah. That sounds like something that could be a short-term action item.
Karen, one more
Yeah.
comment on the branding.
Yeah. Let me get us over to.
One more comment on the branding is that when I say sell ourselves, we're trying to sell ourselves to visitors who don't live here. We're trying to sell ourselves to businesses that might move here. We're trying to sell ourselves to people who might buy a house here. We're trying to sell ourselves to multiple markets. And yes, you can't capture all of what we are in a short statement, which a lot of companies deal with the same problem, and they solve it by saying, you know what, I may be Johnson & Johnson, I may be able to create an overall image of I create family-friendly, healthcare-related products. But then they've got, no more tears shampoo. They branded that. They branded that element. And so if I'm marketing to businesses, I need to figure out what it is that sells them. If I'm marketing to people looking for a house, I need to figure out what sells to them that we have.
And what you're
the
talking
arts and the lake and the so forth.
What you're talking about there is sub-brands, and we do a pretty good job of sub-branding in some of our areas. ED has a very strong sub-brand, the whole Whoville campaign and some of the activities there. The MCL brand has a sub-brand. Our festivals have a sub-brand. The CDB uses the same branding package, but presents it very differently because you're going to a different audience. So sub-branding's got to be a part of it, and that would be assessed also during this, is to say, how do you wrap all these things together? What we have right now is we've got 5 or 6 pretty effective tools. We don't have the umbrella that covers those 5 or 6 effective tools.
And so, and I think that's what that number 4 is really about, is how do we make sure that that package has that umbrella and is effective as possible.
And that context is fine. I would have some odds that we were talking about redoing the logo.
I don't want to redo the logo. That's why I started by saying branding is
Branding is not the logo. Okay.
Well, and a lot of it depends upon how you roll out a brand. And without going into a whole lot of detail, there's basically a list of 10 things that to do and don't do when you roll out a brand. That was in an article I read recently. And the second or third thing on there is don't do it gradually. When you do it, do it. If you'll remember, we launched the brand during a very sharp economic downturn, and so the decision was no new spending, just replace things as they go, and that's why some of Carroll's water towers still have the old brand. We could have spent $150,000 and probably gotten a better impact, but cost was a factor. So we made some mistakes, and we deliberately, knowingly made those mistakes that maybe in retrospect we could have gone a different direction. So the assessment will tell us, how do we recover from that? How do we correct those errors and move forward?
Okay. So let me ask you for a little more feedback on this last item here, because again, it's a component of that same sort of marketing. Neil, you mentioned it just a moment ago about we're trying to market to people who might buy houses here. Is this something that y'all want to consider? Is this something that y'all want us to think through further as we put together a draft document for you?
I definitely.
Definitely.
I'd like to see one of the things that comes out of it be a package that we can give to realtors that realtors can use to market us.
Okay.
One of the issues that you say is often implemented by cities with declining populations. That's not us, right?
No, right, and that's why we're making the distinction of that third bullet is really what we envisioned here, and what I think came through the committees was it's not about trying to recover decline or trying to attract workforce to a boom town, an industry boom town or something, but it's really that third bullet, people whose perception of Lewisville doesn't match what you offer today and what you're putting in place. That it would really, that would be the purpose, the target.
And just to offer one quick example on that, Lewisville's got a number of new housing projects going in right now that are in planning stages. Nick has told you about some of them. You've seen many come to council. Perception out there, even within Lewisville, but also outside, is that we don't have new houses. We have old houses. That's all we have is old houses. If you want a new house, don't go there. Well, we don't have thousands of new ones, but we're getting, 500-600 over the next 18 months. So those are some new houses in a wide range of options. So we had an opportunity. We were actually one of Ray's people forwarded to us. The Morning News is doing a special section on best neighborhoods in North Texas. And they offered an advertising opportunity that is not normally something we would do because we don't generally market to new residents. That's just not been in our focus. But in talking with Nika, she contacted a developer that's doing a townhome project, and he said, yeah, I'll split the cost with you. So we're able to do it for less than half of our cost. We're going to design something that promotes his project, but in a scope of, here's an example of brand new housing, and here's all the things you get if you move here. So there's opportunities, and there's opportunities to do it in a cost-effective way. The thing that's held us back, frankly, is that it hasn't been on our list of priorities, and it does take time away from other things. So it can be done, and we're glad to do it. It's just a question of what you want us to focus on.
So that's kind of a perfect way to do it, is to cover the project.
Sure. So others of you, anybody uncomfortable with that, considering
So-
that? We're okay? Did you?
So You mentioned time, you just touched on time. I'm lukewarm on this, because I think if we do the other big ideas, it's going to pull through a lot of this. So the question then becomes, if I did make this a priority, what am I losing? So where's the bang for the buck?
Yeah, okay. All right.
You tell us what your priorities are, and that's where the resources would go. Or if you want to keep all the priorities and add new, then we find new resources.
And let me remind you before we decide to pick, where out of number 69 is this one, that with what we're trying to do at this point on this retreat is to get kind of the package that's up at the top, and then we'll talk tomorrow, at the end of tomorrow, about the next steps. And part of that is looking at the budget, looking at how these work through. I think it's clear. I think it's clear to us about which one. Some of these are ones that there's really a lot of energy and a lot of urgency, and that bang for the buck that Neil was asking about. And so this may be less, but also the first word there is an important one that I think this is not suggesting that we right now decide to go full out on such a campaign, but it's saying let's figure out what it would involve, and then you have an option to decide that. Okay. Yeah, Leroy.
For me, I don't consider it a top priority. I think that if we do the other things that we talked about, that takes care of itself.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is a consideration,
Okay.
not to be left unattended, but it wouldn't be something that I would want to deal with first.
Okay. All right.
One thing I do like about it is obviously we have a lot of new home development, so I don't remember who said it, people don't have that perception. And so for us to get some inexpensive, little bit of free, advertising to promote that, that's great. And if people learn about our new housing, that's great too. But if we also have an equal number of people that want to come in and they want to buy in some of our older neighborhoods, they want to buy an old house in Old Town and improve it, and buy something over in one of our older neighborhoods. If we have a lot more of that, people investing in those old neighborhoods, that's going right back into whatever number it was for the thriving neighborhoods. We're getting new fresh blood in there, people that want to invest, people that want to care for and obviously that's just going to help property values all around.
Okay. Other comments on the communication and marketing? Or?
Just a quick comment.
Okay.
I didn't say nice with butt toes.
Excuse me, I misquoted you. What yields the most results and what hits the most targets and what can't wait?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And kind of adding to what Councilman Tierney alluded to and several others also, the idea of if you build it, they will come doesn't really always work. Just ask the Hard Rock theme park to shut down in 4 months after a $100 million investment. However, in communication fields, every survey that has been done by any city everywhere that I've seen, when they ask people where they get their information, their impression, number one is always word of mouth. It's my neighbors, my family, my friends, people are talking about it and I heard it and that's how I got my opinion. So if we're doing all these big moves you're talking about, and the people who live here and work here and shop here are saying, wow, that's pretty cool stuff, they'll talk about it and that doesn't cost us anything. So there will be, everything you're talking about today, you do any of those steps you talked about, it's going to help in our communication process tremendously.
And just to elaborate on that exactly, because probably curious too, when I go to Rotary, Lewisville New Rotary Club, got 70 members in it. We don't actually in Lewisville, we meet out of business, we don't have a facility in Lewisville, we have 70 people at lunchtime. But I tell you, in the last 6 months, every time I'm going to, one of them saying, man, y'all got stuff going up everywhere in Lewisville. Y'all are building everywhere I see. What's going on over there? What's this? I mean, people are seeing it. And it's
starting,
amazing,
that's starting to happen.
And they'll say, what y'all building all that? I don't know. Hard to find out what that is. I don't know where the street corner, whatever we're doing. It's like, I called Steve the other day, to ask him what that was over on Hughes side. Didn't get it. But if people are noticing.
Yep, so
That's the word of mouth that you're talking about.
okay. So I think we're wrapped up on this one. It is 3 o'clock. Do we want to?
They ran in a break, Jen. We still have
Food